Usually zoom lenses are advised to beginners as a first lens before moving on to prime lenses. Although I agree with the idea of experimenting with different focal lengths with a zoom, I actually believe that the zoom lens is not really for beginners. You need a certain amount of knowledge and experience with all different focal lenses and their effect on the final images to really maximize the potential of a zoom lens. Before diving into details about why zoom lenses are not really for beginners in my opinion, let's rewind a bit and give you a bit more context about my experience going back to a zoom for my recent trip to Thailand. This is the Fuji 18 to 55mm f2.8 to f4. It makes an equivalent in full frame of approximately 27mm to 83mm, and this was the lens that was sold as a kit with Fujifilm cameras up until very recently. It has been updated a few weeks ago and I hope it benefits from better image quality, because if not, it is not really an upgrade as it loses the optical image stabilization. But anyway, why did I choose a zoom lens going to Thailand over a prime? I have been preaching about how it can be liberating and creatively interesting to travel with only one prime lens. Limitations often promote creativity, and also sticking to only one focal length ensure a consistent style over all your photos. But Thailand, it is a country I visited in 2018 when I was not really into photography yet. Already at the time I had a camera with me, but I lacked all the knowledge and took more or less touristy pictures. So not having a clear memory of the Thailand urban and rural landscape, not really knowing what to expect and what I was about to shoot, I thought that the versatility of a zoom lens would let me shoot any sort of photography and adapt to any sort of environment. And it did so. I'm actually convinced that it was the right choice to go for a zoom, but I have some reserve about that particular lens, which I will elaborate on a bit later. But you may also be wondering why not bringing a set of prime lenses. Fujifilm has this line of f2 prime lenses that are super lightweight and compact. But if there is one thing I hate to do when doing photography is swapping lenses, it always comes into the way and blocks me creatively. So I don't want to do that. This is my personal preference. I either commit completely to one focal length and bring one prime with me, or I take a zoom. If you also know about what zoom lenses are available for the Fujifilm system, you may be asking why I didn't go for the 16 to 50 f2.8 for example, or the Sigma 18 to 50. For me the decision was pretty simple, because the Fuji 16 to 50 f2.8 really went against my desire of having a lightweight setup. It is way too big, so that was out of the competition, and the Sigma would have been my lens of choice if I had a Fujifilm camera that has IBIS. Unfortunately the XE4 is really the simple photography first camera which has no IBIS. But I had sometimes good result with video footage that I stabilized in post, but it is still way too hazardous and you definitely cannot use unstabilized footage coming out of the XE4. So really my only option was the Fuji 18 to 55 with optical stabilization, and I have heard good things about it. Some claims that it is the best kit lens ever made across all camera brands, so I picked it up for my trip to Thailand. I also have some Sony full frame gear that is way more competent when it comes to hybrid shooting, but I really wanted to try a APS-C only trip to see how I like it and whether I'm ready to make a full APS-C transition, but spoiler alert, not yet. But before moving on to the next point, I'm just taking a minute to introduce you to the sponsor of this video, Wondershare Filmora. Wondershare Filmora is an easy-to-use video editing software with plenty of powerful functions. Everyone can start with Filmora easily and quickly, even with zero editing skills, and there are tons of built-in templates such as texts, overlays, and filters to help you edit video quickly. Filmora is also packed with plenty of AI features that allow you, for example, to convert your audio into text and then edit your video based on the text. You can also create a thumbnail straight from the video with a variety of different templates. One thing that can save you also a lot of time is the silence auto detect feature. Filmora will detect all the moments you are not talking and cut everything in a few seconds hassle-free. Filmora is really an all-in-one editing software, so that also means color grading. Learning color grading in other applications can be time-consuming and sometimes quite expensive. Filmora also provides a wide range of preset LUTs that are created by a professional colorist team. You can apply the LUTs, adjust the intensity, and the best feature is that you can also ask Filmora to preserve the skin tones. The mask is also automatically generated by AI, so you spare all the time you would have taken isolating the skin tones manually. There's a lot more that you can do with Filmora, so head over to the description and click on the first link to learn more about all the features included. So thanks a lot Wondershare Filmora for sponsoring this video. It really helps to bring the channel forward and opens new door in terms of going to interesting places and introducing them to you. Also, I could buy new gear and give you honest feedback about them. So thanks again, and let's get back to the video. Coming back to the main statement I did, that zoom lenses are not for beginners. We often hear that zoom lenses are perfect for beginners because they have no idea about focal lenses and which one they prefer. You can keep shooting with one for your first few months of photography, identify what focal length you naturally gravitate to, and pick a prime that matches that. The limitations of a prime, the increased optical quality and added versatility in regards to depth of field are elements that will help you develop and forge your own style. I agree with all of that, but a zoom lens in itself is not best used in the hands of a beginner photographer or filmmaker. A zoom lens in reality, thanks to all the progress made in manufacturing them, is almost like a set of prime lenses. If you look at them, they almost all have written increments that matches the popular focal lenses like 28, 35 or 50mm, so you can look at your lens, select the focal length and shoot. But the ability to select your focal length comes only after months and years of experience trying different lenses. Without the experience, you are more likely to make the common mistake of not moving, not thinking about what focal length is appropriate for the scene in front of you, and just zooming in and out. We often hear that with prime lenses you have to zoom with your feet, but it is only half true. Yes, moving and changing your position is the only way to get closer or further from a subject, but when you do so with a prime lens, you also keep the same characteristics like the distortion or the compression that are related to the focal length you're using. But when you do the same with a zoom lens by zooming in and out, you also change the compression and the distortion drastically. Let's think of a situation where you could place yourself wherever you want, so technically you could match the same framing with all sorts of focal lengths, but if you try, the same frame taken at 28 or at 50mm will look quite different. Here are a few photos where I purposely used a longer focal length even though I could get closer to have a precise result. I wanted more compression, a more flatter image, and that would have looked very different if I got closer and shot wider. But to understand that, thinking of a composition in your head and choose the appropriate focal length, you need a lot of experience, so that's why zoom are not beginner lenses for me. So what I was doing in Thailand with my zoom was first looking at the scene only with my eye, choosing my focal length, framing, and finally I did some micro adjustment if necessary by zooming in or out. Sometimes I also walked in small spaces like market with narrow alleyways. In this context I would shoot more in a reactionary way, so I would set my zoom to the widest and snapping anything I found interesting, whether it was a character or just an object. And when seeing a scene which gave me more time to think, I adjusted my focal length to match my vision for the shot. But yeah, let's have a closer look at what focal lengths I used during this trip. I see that I used all the range from 27 to 83mm, which confirms that it was a good idea to bring a zoom. Looking at the figures, I noticed a lot of pictures taken pretty wide, 27mm, a lot of 35mm also, which confirms my focal length usage theory. When exploring new places, I'm in this discovering mode. I'm impressed by everything and the scenery as a whole, so I tend to shoot wider to capture as much as I can. In my recent video talking about my experience shooting only with 50mm for a month, I said that I like using longer lenses when shooting in familiar places because it encourages me to go into more detail and craft, really make some images rather than capturing the familiar scene as a whole. I see that I also used longer focal lengths quite a lot during this trip. It was for specific situations, but as expected, I shot with wide focal lengths a lot more than if I was walking around familiar places. So will I keep this lens? And to be honest, probably not, because it did deliver decent performances, but I'm not a big fan of the softness at some focal lengths. I was probably a bit too hopeful when reading the comments and reviews before getting it. When it comes to zoom lenses, it's really only the premium, bulky, heavy ones that are very good throughout the whole range and at all apertures. I'm also not a big fan of the highlights rendering in some situations. It creates almost like a bloom that some may actually like, but I prefer having a more capable lens and purposely decide in some situations to use a diffusion filter or something else if I want to go for a less clinical, more vintage look. Another reason, and probably the main one, is that I'm not sure to do this APS-C transition, and if I do it, it will definitely not be with the Fujifilm X-E4. If I were to transition, I would pick a camera with IBIS, and I would probably go for the Sigma that has a constant f2.8 aperture. For now, I'm still very undecided and in the middle of a gear crisis, I would say. I am considering getting the 24 to 50mm f2.8G for the Sony full-frame system. With the 874 and the 33 megapixel sensor, I can even use use the APS-C crop mode on the longer end to have a little bit more reach. This will be most probably my lens of choice for an upcoming trip, but so far nothing planned, so I will just get rid of the Fuji and not get a zoom lens for the moment, because I prefer shooting with prime lenses when I shoot locally. So we're coming to the end of this video. As always, thanks a lot for watching. We catch up in the next one. Bye.